Welcome to the Inevitable You podcast, where we give you practical tools, tips, and strategies for upgrading all aspects of your life. I'm your host, Brian Hemmer, and in each episode, I'll be going into key topics of personal development, the latest in science and psychology on how your mind works, and the best of the best out there in personal transformation, technology, and tools. So, when you think about the results of your life, it really boils down to three things: how you think, how you feel, and then the actions that you take or don't take. Instead of trying to do more or do less, we're getting deep into your psychology to understand how you operate, to think differently, to feel differently, and more empowering emotions to drive new, different actions to create the results that you're looking for. So, I hope you get a ton of value. If you like what you hear, please give our episode a like or a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for updates. And if you think someone could benefit from this, please share it with them. It'd be much appreciated. And you can always visit our website, the inevitableyou.com, for more resources. You can even sign up for a free coaching session there. Connect with us on Instagram at the Inevitable You. Would love to hear from you. I'm always fielding questions from our community here, so please would love to interact with you. Again, hope you enjoy and hope to hear from you soon. All right, Daniel Jimenez, welcome back.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Awesome. So we were talking about you shared a podcast with me recently that I'd love to riff on a little bit, and the title of it was "Reality is an Illusion." I think, if I remember correctly.
Sounds about right.
From the what is it? Know Thyself podcast. I don't remember the name of the guy.
Yeah, Andre Dukum or something like that. And Don Hoffman was the expert that he was interviewing.
And sorry, my connection was getting a little unstable there. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never listened to his podcast, I don't think. You might have shared one with me before, but super fascinating discussion. The guest was a scientist.
It's like a some sort of neuroscience guy.
Yeah. We're going to do our best to summarize some of the concepts he was talking about, but his whole thing is reality is an illusion, and how some of the recent science, right, mostly quantum physics, even neuroscience studies are supporting this notion, this theory that reality as we experience it is all just an illusion, and that there's not really an objective reality, which is kind of hard to even conceive of. Like, it's very trippy to think about that. Really, there's no, the example they use, which is the classic one: if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? Or did it even actually fall? To his point, like, is there that objective truth of the tree falling if there's no one there to observe it? So again, taking the not neuroscience approach to it, which I know you are the same, find very fascinating. That's our thing here, thinking about how the mind works, how we perceive and even create reality. So not sure where we want to start with this, but if we could at least kind of summarize some of the points that they were talking about. But that's at least the gist of it that I got. Was that what you were tracking?
Yeah. And to the point that he was making about the whole tree, he's like, there is no tree. Like, that's, there's no tree that is falling unless someone's observing it. Right. And the fact of, he talked about everything through like evolutionary game theory. That was kind of a big piece that he gets into. So he talked a lot about like the VR headset concept. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if you think about it as what we're seeing, what we perceive as reality is just what's showing up in our virtual reality headset. It's just a projection of like ideas and concepts. So like he
Right.
talked about your computer screen or like your phone, right? If you're seeing there's an email icon on your phone, well, is that actually a letter that's on your phone in that piece, or is it a representation? It's a digital representation done through pixels,
Right.
right? Of a bunch of little, data equations going back and forth, really rapidly to then show this display of, oh, there's an email here. So there really is no email right there. It's just that's what the user display is. That's what the
And I'm still
sensory input or sensory pickup that we get is that picture.
right.
And
And I'm
that's
still here. I don't know if you can still see me, but I want to make sure we're still, we'll still, I changed some settings so we're uploading properly. It was cutting in and out so I can hear you. But
gotcha.
yeah, that if that what you're actually seeing is the objective truth or the reality versus a bunch of pixels, I,
Yeah, just a representation of, in a concept or an idea
right.
when it's
And the whole
observed.
virtual headset metaphor, I really like because, like, if you've experienced virtual headsets or reality, like, it feels real. Like, it feels almost, if you wear it long enough, like that it's the real thing. But he's saying reality, the way we experience it normal waking, is similar to virtual reality in that we're creating a construct or it's a projection of something that's underlying it, of what an actual truth could be, right? But we can't perceive it. And I think he was making a point, like, they've basically, like, proved through mathematical equations that the probability that any reality, that any organism, humans, mice, amoebas, whatever, experience, the probability that that's real is basically zero.
Right.
And my favorite metaphor for that, or way to think about that, is like going back to the visual, what we see, is that actually the thing, or the way that our brains process visual information. Like, first of all, it's photons of light coming in, so they're particles coming in through you know our lens of our eye, going through a nerve. That information, it's an electrical impulse going through our optic nerve to the back of our brains, our visual cortex. So, and not only is it just, that information being sent, but the image we're seeing is actually inverted on our visual cortex, right? Like, it's
Right.
upside down, but our brains make it right side up for us so we can, orient ourselves and see things as right side up. So if you think about just that process alone, it's all created, it's all constructed in our minds. Like, it's just, we're receiving photons and information, but, like, what makes red red or green green? Like, or maybe my red is your green because your brain creates it differently than mine, right?
Sure.
So from that perspective, I get it. That's the easiest way for me to understand this whole reality is an illusion. Um, where it gets difficult for me is the whole, there's no objective truth, or, like, if you don't see it, if we don't observe it, then it's not actually real, or it doesn't exist.
So
Which,
hold on a second.
yeah,
You cut out at what's real for me or what's tough for me to understand is, and then cut
yeah.
out.
What's challenging for me is this concept or notion that there is no objective
Mm.
reality, where, um, like, if there's no observer, if there's no one there to perceive it, then it isn't actually there. Like, it's only through the act of observing that the thing actually exists. That's a very hard to grasp, trippy concept, because, going back to the tree metaphor, like, I know there's a forest in just, 50 miles west of me with trees in it. I could just go drive
Well,
there right now, but is it not there because I'm not
right.
seeing it? Is that how you understood the concept?
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about going back to the headset analogy, he was like, it's a rendering for you. So that forest doesn't exist for you right now until you go over there and you're seeing your rendering of that forest, right? I could be standing in front of the forest and talking to you on the phone and you being like, hey, is the forest there? And I'm like, yep, it's there. But
You're
the
right.
forest is only rendered in my reality, right? Like it's
Right.
not rendered in your reality. And I know that this is there's a lot of layers to it, right? Like he's really big into the mathematical perspective, right, of
Right.
proving or not proving, and to try to like many great scientists, they're geniuses and they're really poor at explaining the concepts because
Uh-huh.
it's like I had to stop and like look stuff up multiple times because
Right.
I,
Right.
I like I don't know
He's,
what. Wait a second. What does that mean? What is
yeah. Yeah.
Boson's theory or what's this framework that he keeps mentioning that's like based on another scientist
Right.
and you know one of the things he was saying was like the mathematical limits. The math provides limits to when this reality doesn't exist anymore. So like to say like Newtonian physics, right? Gravity works up until this limit. Um, Space time
Right.
was the biggest one he kept talking about. He's like, well, space time is real up until this limit in the math. So uh,
Right.
at this micro level, like if you're dialing it down, so if you
Yeah.
say like zoomed in at 100%, right? If I'm zoomed in at 100%, space time's still here, but on a small enough scale, it ceases to exist. It's not that it just goes on forever and ever and ever.
Right.
There's an actual limit, and when you find that limit, then it's it's essentially the proof that it doesn't exist in eternal reality, right? It's not an eternal truth. It only exists on this bandwidth, right? From 0 to 100, this exists. But
Right.
if you go outside of 100 or lower than 0, it doesn't exist anymore. And
Right.
that's just like a really it's an interesting concept, but if you think about sound vibrations, right? At some level, on a human, I don't know what decibel it is, but you
Yeah.
get to a certain hertz, like 220 or 240 or 280,
Certain
and
frequency. Yeah.
that frequency doesn't exist for me in my reality because
Yeah.
I can't hear it anymore. But dogs can hear it, they can perceive it.
Right.
But you keep taking that up and up and up and up, right? And then now, no conscious being on the planet, it's not a reality for them,
Right.
but it can still exist outside there or it doesn't exist depending on you get the philosophical you know um
It's only a
of
headset
it.
that they're wearing in his metaphor. It's only a VR headset that being is using for a certain band of frequencies.
Right, like your senses can only perceive so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very trippy to think about. What's cool for me in listening to that is like that there's actually scientific basis to this notion that reality is illusion. Because like, yeah, on one hand you hear that and you can get it. Like, yeah, okay, the way that I perceive things, the things that I believe, the way that the meaning that I assign to things happening in my life is different than what you think or how you perceive it. Like that's I think way more easy way to understand that. But the fact that this
Sure.
stuff is actually being like supported and in some cases proven through science and mathematics is very exciting. And it's cool to see because it's not just like some pie in the sky or some like metaphorical symbolic thing. It's real. Like your reality is an illusion. It's all made up.
right. And, to his point, he
You
was
still
like,
there?
yeah, can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, and to his point, one of the things, like, when you put on a VR headset and you play Grand Theft Auto, you can either play from a perspective of, oh, this is just a game and I'm just going to have fun. And, that's just my avatar and whatever. It crashes a car, it runs and does some crazy stuff, like no big deal, and you're not attached to the outcome of it. Or you get so immersed into it and you get attached to your avatar, and that car that you're driving is real and these people are real, and you can get hyper focused into it, and that when you take the headset off becomes like really jarring.
Uh-huh.
And that's like, eh, if you were looking at practical application of this type of stuff, one of the things I really liked about the concept is you get to choose how you play in the world, right? Like you can be completely detached from the world, or you could be attached from the world, and they both have their, cause and effect, their outcomes that, maybe you end up doing nothing with your life, or maybe you end up taking your life so seriously that, you create a lot of stress and disease in your life, right?
Right.
Or somewhere in the middle. So it's kind of I look at it from like the practical application of that, of like, well, if nothing's real, or I should say objective reality as we know it is, maybe an illusion, then how can we practically apply this, to live our lives in a more powerful way?
Yeah, absolutely. If you buy the concept, right? If you believe that it's all an illusion, we're all just making it up in our heads, on one hand, then if that's the case, like might as well make the most pleasurable experience possible, at least, right? Like, or what can I do to create the reality that I do want to experience? And my one issue with it, or challenge with it, and this is more from the perspective of other folks that might be listening and thinking like, wait a second, so you're just telling me, that divorce I just had isn't real, it's just an illusion, or that person that died is just an illusion, or like, I don't think that's really what it's saying. You know, it's not intended to dismiss or diminish the things that you experience and the hardships that you go through and what your life is. But reality is really, if it's created, those are just data points, and we create the experience of them, or we create them, big tool we love to use. We create the meanings around it. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this the end of the world? Is this the best thing? Is this, how does this empower me versus disempower me? Like, we, according to this, belief, this theory, if it's an illusion, we get to determine that. And I find that incredibly empowering, that we get to really take charge, and, it's supported. It's being, this isn't just like, a suggestion. This is how it works.
Yeah. You know, to your point, there's a cartoon that I like that I see pop up from time to time, and it's two guys on a bus. They're like little stick figures, and one's looking out the left side of the window, and his head's down, and he's all like depressed. And the thought bubble is life is meaningless. And
Mm.
then the guy on the right side of the bus is like arms up overhead, looking out at the mountains and the sunshine, really excited. And he's like, life is meaningless, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's how you interpret that can be really powerful or really depressing.
Yeah.
And I know when you do go through heavy situations like a divorce or a loss, or loss of job or something like that, like, based on how we've been living our life and how attached we are to this world and our meat suits, which, not to degrade our bodies, like our
Yeah.
bodies are these really powerful things.
The
Um,
avatar.
and also, yeah, and also it's temporary, right? This thing isn't forever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I find it very powerful for me in my life and the work I've done with a lot of my clients, and very freeing when you can get to a point where you realize like the meaning that I make of this is the most important decision that I can make, right? Like is the most important thing I can do. And so whether reality
Yeah.
is real, not real, however you want to experience it, that we call it the third party subjective, or I'm sorry, first person subjective. It's like me seeing my reality.
Yeah.
It's a first person subjective reality is the most important thing because that's where you can change the outcomes. That's where you can change how you deal with things, how you respond to things. Someone dying, you can be really sad about what you've lost, and you can make it all about you and very selfish, right? Just pointing fingers a little bit. Or you can make about the other person and the celebration of life and how thankful you are that they were in this world and the contributions that they made to this world, and it could
Yeah.
be, it's the same event can happen and you can view it and experience it and have two completely different realities based on that one thing that happened.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Incredibly empowering. And, the other distinction I think is important to remember, like, again, it can get really trippy and you can go down a rabbit hole of thinking about, from a personal level. Well, if I'm not experiencing it, does it not exist? We can philosophize, but, the implications of this from a collective perspective of like, when we put all of our perspectives together and we're collectively perceiving things together, I see this having an application of like, we're collectively creating a reality together by perceiving things that are happening. And it's almost like, it's just a fun thought, like where like this world, this planet we live in is entirely constructed by the sum of all of the perceivers and the minds at work. Like we're building this massive playground, this place for us to experience and grow and evolve on a deeper spiritual level. Like that to me is just a really cool kind of concept or way to think about kind of the applications of this. And then you start to think about, well, okay, this group of people has this perspective, that's how they're perceiving reality. It's entirely different. It could be entirely different than mine, versus, this group of people, or I have this kind of belief system or affiliate with this group of people. Like we're all uniquely, collectively creating these realities and they're all true in the way that you perceive it. So instead of like saying this is right or wrong, it's just it's like that's the truth that group or that person's experiencing, and to have respect for that or have curiosity about that or to have compassion for it versus, no, you have to perceive it like me and this is the objective truth. And no, there is no objective truth, right? Like you can't make that argument. You can't say my perspective is the right one or theirs is the wrong one. It's all an illusion. Yeah. It's all being made up. So I think it just lends to like some more cooperation or compassion for other perspectives and views of reality.
Yeah, no, that compassion I think is really important. And I know I've talked with a lot of people in my life, family members and close friends, and objective reality is super important for them. And they want to know the truth, but this is how it happened. And it's like, I understand, like I've always said like, oh, I wish I had a GoPro strapped to me 24/7 so I can, show my wife where I was right and she was wrong. Or, like these scenarios and be like, no, look, this is how it happened. This is reality. This is the truth. But what I really found is that's not a very empowering thing. That's an ego driven, I'm right, you're wrong. Okay, whoo, I feel validated, vindicated, and all these things. And I'm what I help, my friends and family go through is like you searching for an objective truth and constantly, looking for that. You're missing your life, like, and you're missing the interpretation of your life because you're just trying to find what some objective, I mean, it's third party is what it really is, right? It's still subjective in this whole framework of objective reality is an objective, but ultimately, like, having compassion for people experiencing their reality, whether other people think it's true or not, that's something that we haven't allowed for. And especially in the, I'd say the last 2 to 3, 4 years, it's been less and less than it has in the past. This period of grace that we give people.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing that was interesting about the whole conversation they were having, the podcast, is now if you again take this metaphor or think about, I'm just wearing a certain headset and I'm able to perceive these certain frequencies and maybe this band of reality, this like certain, right, like unique band of reality can only perceive certain amount, certain frequencies of light and certain sounds. And what's outside of the headset? Like, what are we not seeing or not paying attention to or haven't opened ourselves up to yet in order to experience something even greater than what we have in just our normal waking lives? And what does that even mean? Like, what would that even look like? And how do we get there? I just personally find a fascinating thought experiment to think about what would a different reality outside of this current headset. If my headset is right now, and mostly, some stressful days, some frustrating days, some angry days, some really good joy and, bliss here and there sprinkled in, but predominantly my kind of headsets really tuned into a frequency of, half emptiness or half empty emotions. Well, again, if that's just the headset, if that's just an illusion, how can I open myself up to more? And then what would reality even be like if I wasn't just a human, but I was experiencing something greater? We have like examples of like extrasensory perception or, communicate with maybe beings that aren't human, angels, right? Or multi-dimensional, interdimensional beings that are highly evolved. Is that possible? I'd like to think so. And something that I'm personally like just makes it fun to explore and think about, what that would look like.
Yeah. No, I mean, the concept of opening up your headset or opening up the range of your headset is massive. I love that visual of it because there's stuff that you don't see. I mean, I remember going through a training course and they were talking about like professional baseball players. If you're not a professional baseball player and you were to stand in the batter's box and you had a Major League Baseball pitcher pitch a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, you wouldn't even know that the pitch left the hand and it was already in the catcher's mitt, right? Like, no sense of it.
Yeah.
But if you were a Major League Baseball player and you were at bat, and you're someone who's a really good batter, you would see that in slow motion, right? That same 99-mile-an-hour fastball, like, you'd be able to see it, you'd be able to connect with it, and you'd be able to hit it out of the park, right? Like, it occurs to you differently because you've been in that situation thousands of times. Mm-hmm. And you have the eye and you've curated your eye to even understand the inflection of what that pitcher's going to pitch, right? Just the mannerisms. You feel something a little bit different. You have this almost extrasensory perception, but it's because you've been in this situation so many times and you've developed an eye for it. You've developed your senses around knowing where and how the pitch is going to land. So it occurs to you completely differently.
Yeah.
And so that's just one like really real world example of how you can take your current reality and expand it to encompass something completely outside of the, possible,
Right.
or that's outside of your possible right now.
Right. Your current scope, your current maybe frequencies that you're tuned into, or what you've just been trained to see. Yeah.
Yes.
100%. Well, it's good food for thought. I don't want to go too long with this. We'll keep these short and sweet, but we only touched the tip of the iceberg here. I definitely want to follow up, have some further discussion around this idea of reality as an illusion, and what does that mean, and what are the implications for us? How do we apply all this crazy new awesome science, that's coming out, that is opening up possibilities and making us think differently about what the world, what this place is that we exist, what are we even doing here?
100%.
Cool, man. Appreciate it as always.
Yeah. Take care, dude.
All right, you still there?